Hello, this is Brian Foster. We are live on Kardec Radio Facebook page. Please tell your friends about Kardec Radio. You can get the app on your Android or iPhone. This presentation is given to you on Kardec Radio and app on your iPhone or Android phone and the Kardec Radio Facebook page. So please sign up and let us know. Please, and also, I will put this video on YouTube and BitChute, so please subscribe to either one, hit the bell, hit the like. We are dedicated to spreading Spiritism throughout the English-speaking world. Anywhere they speak English, we are here. There's been a wonderful group of people on Facebook page, the Kardec Radio Facebook page, that we're doing practically, presentations every day, every other day or so. And so we are getting to a lot of you so you can understand and learn more about Spiritism. Now, today, I'm excited to give to you another chapter from Allan Kardec, The Gospel According to Spiritism. I don't know about you, but I found this was one of his best books. Of course, after the Spirits book, which is everyone should read. And you can get the Spirits book and this book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, on PDF. Of course, you can go to the Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on the FEB store. You can also find it on my blog, nwspiritism.com. Click the picture of Allan Kardec, and it'll take you to a bookstore, and you can find a lot of Spiritist books. So if you find this interesting, keep diving. Keep learning about this. This is just fascinating to me ever since I read the Spirits book, and it's changed my life. So let's get right into Allan Kardec, The Gospel According to Spiritism. Now, this is chapter 23. And he's talking about the strange moral of abandon your father, mother, and children. What did Jesus mean by that? Or was it even written correctly? And this is the one he talks. He talks about Luke chapter 14, verses 25 and 27 and 33. This is what the Bible chapter said, verse. And there went great multitudes with him, and he said unto them, if any man come to me and hate not his father, mother, and wife, and children, and brothers and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whosoever doth bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. So likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsaketh not all that he hath, you cannot be my disciple. And he also references Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son and daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So this was, even to me, this was a very strange one. Why would you want to hate your parents and your family? And so this is what Allan Kardec says. Very occasionally, certain words attributed to Christ make singular contrast to his habitual manner of speaking, so much so that we instinctively repel their literal sense without causing the sublimity of his doctrine to suffer damage. Written after his death, since none of the evangelists wrote while he was alive, it is possible to believe that in cases like these, the depth of his thoughts were not expressed, or, which is no less possible, the original sense, while having been passed from one language to another, has consequently suffered some alteration. It is sufficient that a small error be committed but once, for those who copy to continue to repeat it, as frequently happens in the relating of historical facts. The term hate in the phrase from Luke, if any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children, should be understood by the light of this hypothesis. It would not occur to anyone to attribute these words to Jesus. So then it would be superfluous to discuss it, or even less to try to justify it. For this it would be necessary first to know if he pronounced them, and if he had, whether in the idiom in which they were expressed, the word in question had the same meaning as it does in our language. In this passage from John, he who hates his life in this world will conserve himself for the eternal world. There is no doubt that Jesus did not attach the same meaning as we do to those words. The Hebraic language was not rich in expressions and contained many words which had varied meanings, such as one, for example, is that in Genesis used to describe the phases of creation. It also serves simultaneously to express a given period of time and the period of a day. Later on, from this situation came the translation into the term a day and the belief that the world was created in a period that lasted 6 times 24 hours. Another was the word used to designate both camel and a rope, since all ropes were made of camel hair. This is why they translated the word into the term camel and the allegory of the eye of the needle. Furthermore, so he explains this pretty well. It says, look, if it's not logical, then something had to be wrong. Because, and this is where, when anyone gives us an argument of of more morality, or it's in the Bible, and of course, then Spiritism tells us anything in the Bible which is love, charity, fraternity is eternal. The rest of it, be careful, right? A lot of it was how they talked to people at the time, and as Allan Kardec, a lot of it could be misinterpretation. And I know people say, every word in the Bible is perfect, and Spiritism does not necessarily believe that. It was as good as it could get, given the people that the spirits tried to communicate to and the culture and technology at the time. We are always being told more and more information about why we're on Earth, about the spirit world. It's our relationship with the spirit world isn't a static, okay, we're going to give you the Old and the New Testament, that's it, go to it, right? No, it's very dynamic. And in fact, as we start approaching, this planet, the planet of regeneration, we're going to get more and more messages and communications from the spirit world. So it's going to be a dynamic relationship. It's going to be where it's like we are a student, and instead of a teacher, putting us in the room and coming back after 50 minutes, say, okay, have you done reading your assignment? Which is, it's been, it may have seemed that way for, a few thousand years, but no, it's going to be where we're in a classroom and the teacher hovers over us and said, no, okay, you misunderstood this. Let me help you. Let me help you with that. It's going to be a much more dynamic give and take. Now, will this happen right away? Now, in our time frames, as humans, we are so short. This could be 50, 100, 200 years, but this will happen. We'll get more and more communications from the spirits, and more people will understand it. So, and of course, he also explained, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And of course, it probably should have been rope. But both of them, it's fine, because they're both saying it's hard to go through the eye of a needle in order to get to heaven. So, then he says, without this knowledge, the true meaning of certain words frequently escape us. The same term, when passed from one language to another, may gain either more or less strength. So let's go down here. So then he goes, the next, which is Luke 18, verse 28 to 30. Then Peter said, lo, we have left all and followed thee. And he said unto them, verily I say unto you, there is no man that hath left house or parents or brother or wife or children for the kingdom of God's sake, who shall not receive manifold more in this present time and in the world to come everlasting. And also said the Lord, I will follow thee, but let me first go bid them farewell, which are at my home, at my house. And Jesus said unto him, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. And that was in Luke chapter 9, verse 61, 62. So Allan Kardec says about this, right? Because there's a lot in there about, forsaking your family. So here, without arguing about words, as Allan Kardec is writing, we should look for the thought behind them, which is quite evidently was, the interest of the future life should take precedence over all interest in human considerations. This thought is in accordance with the substance of the doctrine as taught by Jesus, whereas the idea of renouncing one's family would be a frank denial of this teaching. Moreover, we do not have these maxims in mind when we consider the sacrifice of our interests and family affections for those of our homeland. Do we by chance censor those who leave their parents, brothers, sisters, wives, and children in order to fight for their country? On the contrary, do they not gain in merit for having given up their homes and families in order to fulfill their duty? This is then because there are some duties which are greater than others. Does not the law impose that the daughter leave her parents in order to follow her husband? The world is full of thousands of cases in which painful separation is necessary. Nevertheless, affections are not broken because of this. These temporary separations do not diminish either the respect or the solicitude that children owe to their parents, nor the affection of these parents for their children. Therefore, we see that even if we take these words literally, with the exception of the word hate, for they would not be a contradiction of the commandment which prescribes that man honors his father and mother, nor that of parental affections. And then these words have the finality of showing through overstatement how imperious it is the duty of occupying oneself with the future life. And of course, this is what Spiritism tells us over and over again, is that we need to create a balance, not just with our family and other things, but it's all kind of imposed into the balance we need between materialism and spiritualism. We need to come to earth, not be a burden on others, right? We're not, Spiritism doesn't want us to wear a hair shirt or, and go into a cave and survive. No, it doesn't want us to be a monk or a nun in a monastery and do nothing but pray all day. No, that's not what we're here for. We're here to help others. We're here to take part in our civil discourse. We're here to do all sorts of things on this earth. We're here to make a living. We're not here to be, paid a wage for doing nothing. We are here to learn to balance that, at the same time take and prioritize some of our time, maybe away from family, whatever, or including them into learn about God, Jesus, the spirit world, heaven, our life, analyze ourselves, our morals, our character, and our personality. This is a balance that each one of us has to work out, like anything. It's when you're young and for the let's take an example that boys and men sometimes play video games too much. Well, it's fine to play some video games, but do you do it 8 hours a day, or do you do it a couple hours a day and that's your kind of fun? Then you work, and then you study, and then you think and you meditate, and you think about your morals and your character. Everything in moderation, like the ancient Greeks said. So that's why it's important. This is why it's important. This is why we bring you these programs, right? So you can think about this, because we've been told over and over again, right? The reward for learning about how to change your character is always, and doing good on this earth is 100-fold, which you will find when you rise into heaven. And that's why it's important, because heaven is such a wonderful place. And Spiritism has given us, not perfect focus, but so much better than any other I've seen. And that's why I just grasped Spiritism when I first found it, when I read the Spirits book, is it tells you so much more. And then as you read books by Leon Denis, Yvonne Pereira, Chico Xavier, Divaldo Franco, it's just so much more. And Reverend Eva Owen, and which I talk about in my book. I have a series of 3 books, Heaven and Below. It's so much more is exposed on heaven and what it's about, and why do we want to go there, and how wonderful it is, and how we keep learning from it's. Heaven isn't just the Elysian fields where we sit all day and do nothing. And as they say in the Spirits book, you keep working in heaven. And then they said, if heaven is your idea of the Elysian fields, and that truly would be hell, because you'd be bored after a while. I don't know how many people have had a vacation and sat on the beach and How long can you do that for? Now, some people can do it for longer periods of time. So God bless them. Me, I never. I can't sit there for hours on end and just sit in the sun or in the shade or whatever. I have to be doing something. But and of course, everyone is different. But anyway, this is the beauty of Spiritism. It sends us so much information all the time, and it's just fascinating and vital for our own learning and spirituality. Now, let's talk about this. So, talking about things being revealed to us, let's talk about the importance of the family according to Spiritism, so we can get an idea. And this is why Allan Kardec wrote what he did. Spiritism reveals to us that we are imperfect souls on a quest to become pure spirits. That's kind of the baseline. That's why we're here. We're on the school called Earth. What many consider to be bad spirits, demons, or manifestations of the devil are in actuality spirits who have not yet learned the true path to goodness. They are ignorant, immature, or rebellious spirits who reject the hard path to perfection required. And most probably, and I'm sure me included, we've all been there. We've all been not very good and are very ignorant spirits. Now, let's talk about the family. The importance of the family for the spirit world can't be overstated. Let's begin with 3 passages from Kardec's The Spirit's book. Question 695, is marriage, that is to say, the permanent union of 2 beings contrary to the law of nature? And the answer, it is a progress arrived at by the human race. Then question 696, what would be the effect upon human society of the abolition of marriage? And the answer is a return to the life of the beast. And then question 775, what would be the effect upon society of the relaxation of family ties? And the answer, a relapse into selfishness. And boy, have we not seen this in our current era. A relapse into selfishness. And who can deny that family ties have been somewhat relaxed? And also, on these questions, notice the short answers to the questions, as if they needed no further explanations, and the truth was staring you in the face. Only the first question required a modifier. The question stated the permanent union of 2 beings, which was the custom of the laws of that day, whereby that was in the 1850s when Allan Kardec codified the Spirit's book, right? And he codified it by giving these questions to multiple mediums in multiple geographical areas in Europe, mostly France, but other places, right? And unless the answers were similar or the same, he did not codify them. So when he said permanent union of 2 beings, and of course that in the 1850s, divorce was extremely rare. Now this situation led many couples into years of unhappiness. And a further statement in the Spirit's book qualifies it. And this is question 940. Is not the lack of sympathy between persons destined to live together also a source of sorrow, and one that is all the more bitter because it poisons an entire existence? And their answer is very bitter. It is, undoubtedly, but it is usually a misfortune of your own causing. In the first place, your laws are at fault. For how can you suppose that those who dislike one another can be intended by God to live together? Therefore, according to Spiritism, if you're unhappy, get a divorce. And when I say unhappy, Spiritism wants us to work. We are here to help that other person. So just because you're like, oh, I'm not happy, I shouldn't have even said that. If things are not manageable, and there is just constant tension, and you're really not helping, you're actually hindering each other, then it is time to honorably try to separate and get a divorce. But just because, in this world, if I'm not happy for a day, I need to find somebody else. No, it's not what the spirit world wants. We can't be, flitting from one thing to another. We need to look at our obligations, and it has to be thought out carefully. So In summary, according to the spirit world, not all marriages are perfect unions. Since they are a product of people's free choices, it may be one of the many lessons we must learn in our lifetimes. Therefore, people are allowed to withdraw from a bad marriage, but how and when that is accomplished might incur debt, which may have to be repaid later. So, a successful family is made up of two kindred spirits. According to Spiritism, when spirits reincarnate, they can return as male or female. Question 202: does the spirit, when existing in the spirit world, prefer to be incarnated as a man or a woman? And the answer is that point in regard to which a spirit is indifferent, and which is always decided in view of the trials which that person has to undergo in their new corporal life. So therefore, the sexual combination of a couple isn't that important. What is vital is the affinity of the spirits and their love for each other. Marriage is a partnership which allows the souls to see that each other in the possibility to improve themselves beyond which they could achieve alone, and to assist the partner in the same quest. In the book Missionaries of the Light by Chico Chapier, a spirit instructor discusses marriage and love on earth. This is what they said. Love on earth, love on those lower planes is like gold lost in a large quantity of ore, demanding great efforts and laborious processes to reveal itself to the experts. But among those humans who do in fact are proceeding toward their elevation, the sexual union is much different. It entails a sublime exchange of paraspiritual energies, symbolizing divine nourishment for the mind and heart, and creative power not only for children of the flesh, but also for generous deeds and achievements of the soul for life eternal. Now, let's go to the next thing in Allan Kardec's book. And this is Leave the Dead to Bury the Dead. And in Luke chapter 9, verses 59 and 60, and he said unto another, Follow me. But he said, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. Jesus said unto him, Let the dead bury their dead, but go thou and preach the kingdom of God. So Allan Kardec writes, what can the words leave the dead, the care of burying their dead mean? The previous considerations, so primarily in the circumstances in which they were proffered, they could not have contained a censure for the one who considered it to be a devotional duty of children to bury their father. Therefore, we have a more profound meaning here, which can only be perceived with a more complete knowledge of spiritual life. Life in the spirit world is in effect the real life, the normal life of the spirit. Terrestrial existence, being transitory and passing, is a kind of death when compared to the splendors of activity in spirit life. The body is nothing more than a gross covering which temporarily closes the spirit. It is a true fetter which secures it to the soil and from which the spirit feels happy to be liberated. The respect given to the dead is not inspired by matter, but is due to the remembrance that the absent spirit imbues. It is similar to someone who bestows an object which belonged to them and which they handled, that is kept by those who had affection for the person as a remembrance. This is what the man could not understand for himself. Jesus taught him by saying, Do not worry about the body, but think first of the spirit. Go and teach about God's kingdom. Go and tell men that their homeland is not to be found upon the earth, but in heaven, because the true life exists only there. And this is very pertinent, and it's very pertinent today, tomorrow, always for all of us. And what you read about in many of the spirit literature is where spirits will gather around a person who is passing over, leaving their physical body and going into this back to the spirit life, how they are assisted by spirits to, cut that, paraspiritual cord, that silver cord, and so they can be free of their body. In fact, Leon Denis says that dying is less traumatic than birth. And dying actually is it's not bad, and you wake up in a wonderful place where you want to be, and as Andre Louis says, he just feels so light, right? I finally got rid of this dense body, and as Spiritism says, you can like we can only see 1/8 of the world around us. When we're spirits, we can see much more. We can are sensitive much more. We see more of the colors, everything. We are more free. It's just wonderful when you're a spirit who has risen into one of the levels of heaven. And in fact, other spirits will help spirits passing over. And a reader of our blog, nwspiritism.com, Chris, and she has her own Facebook page, Dharma Nature, and is a practicing medium. And years ago, she wrote me that she became excited reading Chico Xavier's book, No Solar, because she remembers being one of the spiritual helpers who actually assisted people after they passed on to the spirit world. And a team of spirit helpers were responsible for rescuing Andre Louis, the spirit who dictated the book to Chico Xavier. I recommend that book. There's actually also a movie called Celestial City or Astral City, but the book is No Solar, and I recommend that to everyone. But you can also see the movie rented, I think, for $2.99 on YouTube. It's a wonderful book, wonderful movie and book. But Chris wrote me, this is what she said, because my most recent adventure involved Chico Xavier's No Solar. As someone who remembers being a helper, it was exciting to see home identified. I thought I was the only one who knew about and remembered home. I must have worked there for hundreds of years helping spirits. Then I came back here to learn some new things for a couple of short lifetimes, plus this one. Anyway, I want to vouch for home as a reality. The details about its structure may vary, but it is an amazing place of love. And so there's many spirit colonies all around the world. No Solar is a spirit colony above Rio de Janeiro. There's other spirit colonies above where your hometown is, above Chicago, above New York, above LA, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, wherever, right? Paris. These people will go into those cities or other cities, depending on where you were and where you're born, where you have affinity for, if you go into one of the levels of heaven. Then I'll further on, she's saying, and from home you can access any place on earth. It is not uncommon for people who have reached the helper level to enter the dreams of the embodied, which can be done directly from home to offer help and advice. So, once again, she tells us, a person who hasn't been aware of Chico's books finds verification of their own ideas and memories. Chris did write to say, and unlike Andre's experience, when he spent time in the lower zone, not all people experience this writing episode. And of course, she's right. A lot of people don't. It all depends on what happens. And then she says, with sudden or unexpected deaths, people often don't know they have crossed over. They look for familiarity, and their own mind creates that for them. The good news is that someone like me, what I used to do anyway, will meet you where you are and help you through the process. Now, in this, of course, Chris is completely correct. In Andre Louis' book, there are many instances of spirit helpers assisting people right from their deathbeds and other locations. So, although I would like to say, in cases of suicides, the spirit who takes his or her own life is generally obligated to remain in the umbral, the lower zone, until such time as their normal death would have occurred. So hence, I want to make sure suicide solves nothing. In fact, you have to stay in this not so very nice place until your normal death will occur. So if you committed suicide at age 40, and you weren't in your life blueprint, your life plan said you weren't going to die till you're 70, you would have to spend 30 years in a not very good place. Now, in Andre's case, he spent time in the lower zone, the umbral, but he did not deliberately kill himself, but he allowed his behavior, excessive drinking, and he had syphilis, to cut short his life. Hence, he unconsciously committed suicide. And the second lesson is, not only must we finish the classes assigned to us, but we have to take care of the materials we are given, which is our bodies. So then Chris wrote me more. She writes down some of her recollections. She goes, I remember many instances of having to adjust my vibration to see what the new arrival was seeing. Again, just what Spiritism tells us. A higher spirit has to make themselves more dense, more matter, less energy, so the other person can actually see them, and then they can see what the other person is seeing. People often see their place of work or their home or the beach or hell if they think that's where they are going. I had to help them through that. So for one instance, one man wanted to find his office, so I helped him. And while we located his office, we talked. At some point when the time was right, I would always ask, do you remember what you're doing just before you met me here? And this conversation would eventually lead them to the realization that they had passed on to the next life. Then and only then could I lead them to home for what amounted to sessions with the social worker examining their lives. It wasn't judgmental. It was more like what went well, what could have been better, etc. And sometimes I felt bad when people were sent back, which would only happen after the counselor and the person both agreed that this was for the best, NDEs. So from our own time, this medium knows all about NDEs. That's what I always said. An NDE is like me taking out of your class, talking to the vice principal, going, okay, what are you doing? Well, I think that you should go back to class. So, there's so much independent verification. Here's a medium who never heard of Spiritism is completely, validating the point of Spiritism. And this is why it is so exciting for people to understand and learn about. I'll carry on with what you said. Another I remember was a very take charge, upper class kind of man who mostly sneered and barked orders at me as he tried to find his way to the familiar surroundings. And I just smiled and helped. And eventually the realization that we would go home. So it's funny because I wrote her back. She said that to me, and I said, that last person, that's probably me, right? That probably could have been me because I would just bark orders. Hopefully I've been softened by my discovery of Spiritism. And so then she wrote me back, okay, let me tell you more. She goes, time doesn't mean much when you're home, but the incident I referred to was probably in the 1800s, maybe. The gentleman was a victim of an accident on a sailing ship and found himself on shore looking out at the water. He saw me and demanded I summon a carriage to take him into town. He wanted to get in touch with his family and tell them what happened. He was kind of surly in a way that people who expect others to jump when they speak tend to be. So I explained in a loving, compassionate way that his transportation would soon be along, and why don't we talk while we wait? So he complained about the lack of service and general incompetence of others, along with my perceived lack of helpfulness. We sat on the hillside and waited, and as he talked a bit about his life, I don't remember the details though, eventually as he calmed down, though still frustrated, I asked the question, do you remember what you were doing just before you met me here? And he told me about being on the ship and how it heeled over and he got knocked into the water, he thought. She goes, do you remember how you got here? No, I don't remember. I swam to shore would be my guess. And then she said, well, that's interesting. Why aren't you wet? He goes, I don't know. I dried off. He goes, really? When did that happen? And so on. And eventually a light clicked on. He said, did I die? He goes, your feelings are true. Listen to them. You can see this place is not where you were, and you don't know how you got here, and this will tell you what you want to know. So what happens now? Come, I will show you, she said. Now, isn't that wonderful? She goes, I stood up and reached out to him, and he stood up and took my hand, and as we turned away from the sea, a city he had not seen before seemed to rise up before us. We're going home, I said, come. And we walked to home together, where he was met by a counselor who took over from there. Home was simply there when he was ready to see it. If any of that rings a bell of familiarity, then perhaps it is so. I don't know what happened after that. My job was getting people and adjusting the vibration to home so they could go there. That was it. Others had other responsibilities. Already, she's telling you all the different jobs that are in the spirit world. I have general information about my spirit history back to the 400s or so. In this life, I was made aware of the overview exactly on my 4th birthday, a July day many, many years ago, sitting on a street curb in Sacramento, California. I've had to work out a lot of the details since then, but everything I learned was subsequently verified by medium friends. I lived lives as a nun, a shaman, a diva, a war victim, a skeptic debunker, and plain old me. And I've learned that life is all about closing circles. So true. This is why Jesus told us in the New Testament we should forgive 70 times 7, because it's all about things we've done wrong in the past and coming back and asking for forgiveness, and other people wanting revenge on us because we've done something bad to them. And that's why the more you can leave this life with being friends with everybody and reconciling everything, the better off your work. And then Chris's account of her work in the spirit world is inspiring and comforting, knowing that we are surrounded by such benevolence and love to give us all the courage to continue to the struggle in our daily lives. In fact, I've written a book about that, about the constant guidance and love that we walk in every day. Now, my book is The 7 Tenets of Spiritism. And I talk about how that has changed my life and how I look at the signs and signals of Spiritism and how they impact me and how I think they will impact you if you will only rest for a bit and look at them and decide what they mean and know that you are loved and guided by the spirit world all the time. Since we are on this earth, this planet, this campus called Earth, where we are here to learn to reshape our personality and our character. That is why we're here. That is the raison d'entrée of our life, is to improve ourselves. It's not to buy a new car, not to have the biggest house, not to have multiple houses or a yacht. It is to improve our character. Because what can we bring with us when we go over to the spirit world? Just us. Nothing. So let's go on one more discussion by Allan Kardec. And this is, I have not come to bring peace, but dissension. And this is from Matthew 10, verses 34-36. Think not that I have come to send peace on earth. I am come not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall they be of his own household. So, what does that mean? So it didn't, as Allan Kardec says, it didn't mean he's going against his father. This is more of an allegory. So this is what he said. Could it really be that Jesus, the personification of gentleness and goodness, who never ceases to preach the need to love our neighbors, could have said, I come not to bring peace, but the sword, to separate the son from the father, the husband from the wife? I've come to set fire to the earth and am in a hurry for this to happen. Are not these words in flagrant contradiction to his teaching? And Allan Kardec writes, carries on, it is not blasphemy to attribute to him the language of a bloody and devastating conqueror. No, there is no blasphemy nor contradiction in these words, because it was he who pronounced them, and they are testimony to his great wisdom. It is only that they are a little ambiguous, and the form does not express the thought with exactitude, thus giving rise to misunderstanding as their true meaning. Taken literally, they have a tendency to transform his mission, which was all peaceful, into one of perturbation and discord, which is absurd and a good sense that repels this, seeing that Jesus could not contradict himself. Every new idea inevitably encounters opposition, and there is not one which is implanted without a fight. Well, in these cases, the resistance is always in proportion to the importance of the foreseen results, because the greater these are, the more numerous are the interests which are affected. So this is what he's saying. This is what Allan Kardec is saying. Jesus is talking about the revolution of ideas that Jesus is bringing. And we do not understand the degree of the revolution during that time period. And this was, might does not make right? You don't thirst for revenge. This was like, if you don't get revenge on someone wrong you, you're an idiot. And a lot of us, we're still thinking that today, but not as much, right? We're trying to think of love, peaceful, and forgiveness. But then it was, you take what you can, and you treat people inferior to you like the dirt that they are, right? And in fact, 400 years before Christ, Socrates said the same thing. He said, no, there is right and wrong. Just because you have power doesn't make you right. And of course, like Jesus, the ruling class of Athens of their day did not like those words, and they killed him for it. They drank the hemlock. And Jesus, the same thing. They did not like the word saying, my kingdom is not of this place, and there is something superior to what all these other people who are trying to tell you what to do, rob you of your gainful employment, etc. And they're trying to tell you that the only allegiance you should give is them on earth and not to your spiritual side. And we still hear that same message in a lot of our culture today. That we should be materialistic and buy things and not worry about how we step over other people. Now, that's more rare than it was back then. And that was, what Jesus preached was certainly revolutionary. Just like what Buddha preached, Zoroaster preached, right? Those were all Confucius, Lao Tse, those were all revolutionary. And all these people came from the spirit world trying to tell us, look, people, yes, we know you're humans and we know you like your material goods, but can you soften that a bit and not walk over people and not be mean to people and strut around with, displaying what your own perceived, superiority is? Can you resist that a little bit? Because that's what they've been telling us, right? And it's the thing with the golden rule: treat others as you would have others treat you. And it's in all the major religions and doctrines. Can you at least treat others nicely? And this is funny when I read about these people, analyze religions and go, Christianity stole this from, the Zoroastrianism, and, someone else got this from something else. Well, that may be true. But the fact is, all these people came from the same place. They all came from the spirit world, and they were all ministers, is somewhat, very high up from Jesus, who is the governor. He is the CEO of this planet. He leads us. He's our father. He helped create this planet. He helped guide the evolution of all the plants and animals, everything. Our physical body is a direct result of the effort that Jesus and his people put into our evolution. And this is what Spiritism reveals so much, is that Jesus is what we need to understand in order to understand God. And we've been told that by spirits over and over again, is that, and even in spirits, they say, look, you cannot understand God. And people think, when I go to heaven, I'll meet God, right? I used to think that. No, and spirits say, look, even higher spirits in heaven, around the bands of heaven, around the earth, there's much more heavens and much higher bands. Because even we don't understand God that well. You have to get much higher for them to get to more and more understand God. But the way you can begin to understand God and his domain and his love for all of us is to begin to understand Jesus Christ. Understand Jesus, and that's your portal to be understanding of God and all his complexity. And I tell you, the more I read about Spiritism, and the more, especially in my series of 3 books, Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and How We're Guided by Spirits, the processes of the spirit world, the organization of the heavens around the earth, because there's levels far beyond its, there's bounds of heaven around every inhabited planet. But it's just so complex, and the way we volatilate, we move by the speed of thought, the way we can query from the universal data cloud, where there's every thought, everything is captured. All these things is just so complex and yet so brilliant, of how we are here on earth to become a perfect spirit. And to me, once you understand why we're here on earth is to improve ourselves, and yet we're not here on earth. We're not given the earth to say, oh, you have to be perfect. You have to be very good to everybody because we told you so, or you're going to be smote, right? Or we're going to kill you and wipe you off forever. That's not what God and Jesus wants. He wants us to become good on our own free will. That is why, if you want to talk about why is there chaos, why do good things happen to bad people and vice versa, bad things happen to good people, there's a hyphenated word I can tell you: free will. We have the free will to cause chaos and destruction on earth until we learn not to. And that's why we're all on this collective earth together. That's why we're on a planet of atonement. We're on a planet of atonement where we have a life blueprint to go through trials and tribulations to teach us to become better people, better souls, better personalities, to rip out our primitive emotions, hate, envy, selfishness, pride, and replace them with love, honor, charity, and fraternity. That's why we're on earth. Everything else is dross, right? Everything else doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you aren't rich. It doesn't matter if you don't have a yacht. It doesn't matter if you think you're a victim. Tough, right? Stop thinking you're a victim. You were put in whatever age, race, class, country, city, parents, family, for a reason to teach you something. So learn what you can learn, what the circumstances are teaching you. Accept it gracefully. Doesn't mean you can't go out and try to better yourself and become more successful in your mind. Don't do it walking over people, please. But do it, there's nothing wrong in that. But understand, no, you're in a situation because it was planned for you. It was there. And that's what's so important, to understand the love of the spirit world and how they want us to understand that. And so I talk a lot about it, how you are shown of what you need, of how reincarnation works, and how you do have a life blueprint, and how you will go and you'll talk for those in heaven, right? Those are not in heaven, it's kind of assigned to you. But for those in one levels of heaven, you will actually work with your spirit mentors to plan out what your life should be. Okay, what should I improve? What should I have atoned for? What haven't I really learned? Because the earth is a perfect place, because we have all the stimuli hitting us all the time. It's a perfect place to really reform your character and your personality. In heaven, it's not so good. You're intellectually, you learn, but the atmosphere is so pleasing and so wonderful. You don't have that hard stimuli, those tragic events, those family dynamics, those dramas that will make you really root out some of the primitive emotions in your foundation and replace them with more noble emotions and guidance. So anyway, I want to leave you with that. I want to thank everyone for coming. Please share this video with other Facebook sites. If you're listening to on YouTube or BitChute, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and all my books are down. You can see down below in the details section, or go to my blog, nwspiritism.com. Sign up for that. I just send out a one blog per day, something new about Spiritism, and I do, YouTube's, etc. Anyway, I want to thank everyone and say God bless to all of you tonight. Have a wonderful night.